get that last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure you did.
Yeah. Wait, what the frick?
Nuh-uh.
Why is... Oh my gosh.
Why is she getting... I think we should just qualify.
Literally,
Okay, so this like Senate meeting was like really bad though. This was last minute, and that's what everyone voted for. I didn't even know. That's what the Senate people voted. You're gonna say that? No. That's what they voted for. So
oh my gosh.
But
Bakula?
will be more organized, and we can like steer
Cool.
the voting against.
Oh, this is really...
Wait, what do you? You know it's live right now.
Are you moving this
It
live?
is?
Yeah.
Are you moving this?
Wait, did everyone?
Can we?
Oh!
Can they
Yeah,
hear us?
anybody can hear you right now. It's live.
Hi!
Go back to the welcome so it'll mute you. All right, so I'm waiting for everybody to tell me if they're in or not because I haven't heard from anybody. So if somebody could let me know if everybody's in, that'd be great. So Brianna, do you have anything to say to entertain the people in the meantime?
Me?
Yeah.
How about in all of your classrooms and groups, turn to the person beside you and quietly talk to them about the best
No,
part
maybe
of your
let's not do that. Evan, do you have anything good?
No, so we just all be
Oh my
quiet.
god.
Just all be quiet.
Just
Just
sit
talk
there.
amongst yourselves.
That's what I was saying.
Take a nap, guys.
Yeah, take a nap.
It's essay chapel, guys.
So take a nap.
Wow. Did you get any texts?
I got one from Sigs.
Woo!
Yes. Whoever's in Sig's classroom, y'all are amazing.
Okay, y'all.
Those are my-
second.
Those are my classmates.
With Jen.
Are we supposed to have 8?
Why are
Is-
you guys like the one?
Huh?
Why are you?
Someone's calling me. This is great.
Okay.
I can't.
Where are
Did
you?
you answer it?
No, it was Dawson. I declined it.
Are we muted?
No, you're not muted.
Yes.
I don't know if everybody's in. I don't know how many people we're supposed to have.
I feel like we should have a talk
It's
show.
just
We
so
should have we should be an essay talk show. So
We should start interviewing someone. Come on.
Okay. Oh.
So, Clarice,
Cool.
how's junior year treating you?
It's okay. Mediocre, to be
Mediocre.
honest. But
Mediocre.
yeah.
What about you, Zach?
It's
Hello?
I agree. Are we?
What about you, Brianna?
Senior year has been interesting. I think there's a lot of things that could have been better, but honestly, make the best of it.
Amen.
Yep. What about you, Larissa?
Junior year has been academically interesting. I like junior year though, I guess. Interesting things with COVID. Probably wasn't gonna be the same if it wasn't. But it's been good.
Yep. What
So-
about you?
It's been interesting. Not necessarily always like all for like good interesting.
All right, we have 8 people. You do realize we're here.
Oh, is it?
Let's see you.
Everyone? Evan, what about you?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought
Dear Mom, I do see. I know. I'm just making sure I have everybody. I think we have everybody. All right, guys. Shh. All right. All right. Well, welcome to Chapel. As you can see, I'm not Mr. Wilhelm, clearly. He decided to go golfing, so we love that for him. Anyway, so I guess we're going to start off with Pledge of Allegiance. Yes. All right. Where's the Pledge of Allegiance? There it is. All right. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we're going to have our wonderful members of SA sing the school song for us. And not me this time, because I don't want to. All right, so. Oh.
I'm gonna break his computer.
Here, scooch. And make sure and sing in your locations too if you want to.
With your masks on.
With your masks on, please. All right.
Yes.
Oh.
You can just stand right in front of me.
All right.
Down in the southern mountains, where the French broad flows, in the hills of North Carolina, where the laurel grows, there's a school where lads and lassies come from far and near. There's a school of closest friendship that we all hold dear. School of the mountains, school of standards high, ideals and courage, faith and loyalty. School of the mountains, school of standards high. Fletcher Academy, Fletcher School.
Yay.
Y'all sounded great.
Wow, wasn't that absolutely gorgeous? All right, makes me love this school more and more. So, all right, next up we have our wonderful announcements. Give me a minute. All right. So, home leave transportation. If you are taking any of the school transportation to go home, then the fee is due on Friday, October 9 at noon. If you pay any later than that, there's going to be a late fee, and that would be no bueno. All right. Dress code. All students must be in uniform beginning on Friday. Apparently, Ms. Connerly has a list of a few students that still have open orders with Reeds, but failure to be in uniform will result in a referral to the office. So make sure you're in uniform. So just a reminder for a banquet, payments are due the Monday after break, which is October 19. So if you haven't paid for that, you might want to do that soon. And yeah, so campus ministries. Vespers is going to be, as it's been recently, it's going to be the Chosen in 2 different locations, the chapel and the girls' dorm chapel. For Sabbath, breakfast usual at 11 or 10 a.m. Church is different this time. It's going to be 11 a.m. in the LPC, so that's exciting. We all get to be together, I believe. Sabbath movie is going to be in the ad building. We're going to be watching I Still Believe at 2 p.m. And Ms. States told me there is no limit on how many people can come because we can do it in multiple rooms in that building. So feel free to come to that. Normal dinner at 4:30, and sundown worship is in the dorms. And now I need someone from SA. Someone from SA is supposed to give this announcement. Yes, about fall picnic and hurricanes.
Okay, so it has come to our attention recently that there is a hurricane that is going to be pretty soon, and that basically means that fall picnic or some scheduled fall picnic might be postponed or might be moved. So Mr. Bass is going to send a parent alert pretty soon, hopefully today, and just check your phones for that and see for updates.
Awesome. All right, Brianna, it's your turn.
Wait, I can't see myself. Oh, okay, that's okay. Oh, okay. So, last week we gave you 3 candidates to vote for Brothers Keeper, and just a reminder, Brothers Keeper is demonstrating an understanding and concern for others. And so you guys voted on somebody, and the winner is, drumroll please, Daniel Metz. Woohoo! Yay! Congratulations.
Oh. All right, I guess Larissa has an announcement.
Just to add on to fall picnic, make sure you guys wear your class shirts for worship on Sunday, and be sure that you're there at whatever time it's supposed to start. 11. Because attendance
Your
is
class will get points for attendance.
Yes, your class will get points for attendance. So be in your class shirts and be there on time. Got it.
All right. So I believe that's all for announcements, and I think we're going to bring in our speaker now, which is, who's the speaker? Oh, my bad. Oh, you have a health? Okay, my bad. A little bit of confusion. Clarice has something she wants to do really quick, so we'll bring it over to her. Yeah.
Hey, okay, so in my campaign video, I mentioned how I really want to talk about mental health to you all, and it's a part of total wellness that doesn't really, or that gets overlooked, and that's very stigmatized. All right, so, okay, as you can see, I have a question for you guys. So, can you guess what all of these people have in common? They all suffer with, all right. They all suffer with an illness that doesn't discriminate based on age, sex, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, or occupation, or even religion. And it also they struggle with is mental illness. And these are probably many individuals that you guys look up to or even admire. But they struggle with these illnesses as well. 1 in 5 teens struggle with a mental illness. That means that between you and the 4 people near you, one of you guys struggle with a mental illness, whether it be depression, which is the most common, or anxiety, or eating disorders, or PTSD, or even personality disorders. Suicide remains the 3rd leading cause of death among teens, and it's the first among those with a mental illness. So why is there so much stigma attached to mental illness when there's no stigma to have an illness like cancer? There's a story about a young girl whose parents took her to the hospital, and she was hospitalized because she had extreme stomach pain. And for those of you guys who don't know what bulimia is an eating disorder. And this young girl had bulimia, and the doctor knew about it and basically told her, this is your problem, you have to fix it. And they did not treat her, and she died. And if this was, on the other hand, a case such as a cancer patient, or like someone brought in, like a broken leg or something, the doctor wouldn't tell you to go fix it yourself. That's something that you can't really help. And a lot of people don't, have that huge misconception, but mental illness is truly an illness. It's something that has to do with brain chemistry and how your brain functions. It's not something that you necessarily can control. Sometimes it can come from a trauma that you experience when you're young, or sometimes it's just genetic and it runs in your family. So when bringing up depression or common mental illnesses, some symptoms that manifest in teens, for example, are very different than the ones that manifest in adults, or the ones that are just assumed. Most people think that it's consistent sadness or insomnia or loss of interest, and while all of those are very, important and noticeable, traits of someone who has depression or who has a mental illness, in teens, it could just be extreme sensitivity to criticism, aches and pains, or even irritability. And to people who are actually diagnosed with depression or who unknowingly suffer from it, seeing other people joke about it or make comments such as, oh, I'm depressed, I failed this test, or oh, I'm depressed, this guy doesn't like me, those things can really, undervalue what that person is actually going through. And, more often than not, they don't seek treatment, which leads to suicide in some cases. So what I'm asking you today is just to talk, listen, and learn about mental illness. And remember, you gotta nourish to flourish. Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to introduce the speaker, which will be Melissa. So, yeah.
Okay, hey guys. So it's really weird being here and talking to everybody and not being able to actually see any of you guys. But I'm going to be speaking for your chapel today. And I would like to start by going ahead and having a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, thank you for this beautiful day that you've given to us. Thank you for just waking us up to another day of life. I ask that you would be with all of us as we are, even though we're not all together and we're spread out in different locations for chapel. And just help us to have a great rest of this day and be with anything on anybody's hearts. Please take my words and the words that come out of my mouth and help them to come from you, because my words on their own really have no power, but I know coming from you they do. And so just please use my words to touch people's hearts and to help somebody to find a blessing through this. And we love you and thank you for all of the blessings that you give us and everything you do for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so I'm going to start by telling a story. I kind of did a little worship using this story in the girls' dorm for girls' dorm worship freshman year, so most of you guys haven't heard this before. I'm going to start. This would normally be the time that I would ask, how many of you guys like chocolate chip cookies? And everybody would raise their hands, but I can't see any of you, so I'm just going to assume that if I were to ask that question, probably a lot of you would raise your hands saying that, yes, we like chocolate chip cookies. Now, if I were to ask how many of you actually know the story about how chocolate chip cookies were invented, probably the number of hands that would go up would be significantly smaller. So I'm going to tell you the story of how chocolate chip cookies came to be on your table, the wonderful thing that are often served at events and stuff. Chocolate chip cookies were actually invented by accident. So there was a lady, and I guess she had people who were going to be coming to her house or something, I'm not sure, but she had some kind of entertaining she had to do, and she wanted to make chocolate cookies, not like chocolate chip cookies, but the ones where the whole cookie itself is actually a chocolate cookie.
But she didn't have the baking chocolate that she needed in order to be able to make the chocolate cookies. And so she had chocolate chips on hand and assumed that if she threw the chocolate chips in there, they would just melt throughout the entire cookie and make chocolate cookies as you normally would, and it would end up having the same result. So she threw the chocolate chips in there, and they actually did not melt and go throughout the whole cookie the way cocoa powder would, but they stayed in their little clumps. And everybody loved it. She went ahead and served it anyways, and the people were like, wow, this is awesome. This is the thing we actually need to be eating and making. And so chocolate chip cookies were born. And I'm sorry I don't have chocolate chip cookies to give to all of you, because that would be really cool if I did, but I don't. So I'm sorry. Now I want to look at a story in the Bible. The story of Joseph. The story of Joseph is pretty long, so I'm not actually going to go through and read the whole story. But I'm assuming most of you probably know it, but just to recap, Joseph grew up being one of the favorite sons of his father and had all this stuff given to him, and he had a good life. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he goes to do an errand for his father, going to talk to his brothers, and they decide that they don't want him to have this awesome life anymore because they're jealous. And so they go ahead and they take off his nice clothes that his dad had given to him, and they throw him into a pit. And then they decide that they're going to sell him into slavery. So just like that, Joseph's life went from this awesome, blessed status that he had to being at the very bottom, and he was a slave. And then he finally was able to get some status as a slave, being the slave of Potiphar, and in charge of everything that Potiphar had. But then again, all of a sudden, his life starting to look up, and something went wrong, and he got accused of a crime he did not commit, and he ended up in prison. And he was in prison for quite a long time. But then in the end, he ends up being the second hand, in control of all of Egypt, and he ends up getting to save Egypt from this famine, and not just Egypt, but his own family that didn't live in Egypt, because the famine was so bad and affected so many places. But God put him in a position to where he knew that it was going to be happening, and he gave him the wisdom to help plan so that he would be able to provide for everyone else. And it ended up saving his own family, because his own family came to buy grain. His brothers came to buy grain from him, and at first they didn't know it was him, but then he went ahead and he revealed himself that it was him. And I do want to read from Genesis, this one part. Genesis 45, chapter 45, verses 5 through 11. And I know most of you guys are not in a place that has Bibles, but if one of you does happen to have one, you can go ahead and turn there. So it says, but this is when Joseph is talking to his brothers after his brothers, they're like, oh no, we did so many horrible things, now he's going to throw us in prison because he has status. And Joseph is like, no, I'm not going to do that. He says, but now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children, your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. So Joseph was able to end up being able to take care of his family because of all these harmful things that had happened to him, these things that seemed bad. If he hadn't had all of this happen to him, he never would have ended up in Egypt, and he wouldn't have had a way to be able to plan, or had a status where he had the position and the ability to be able to store all this stuff, to be able to then provide for his own family and even more people. And a lot of people's lives were spared because of it. So what do these two stories that I've told you so far kind of have in common? Well, in both of them, there was something that kind of went wrong. In one, it was a specific person kind of made a mistake, like the lady not having the the right thing. She didn't follow the recipe. She, I guess, theoretically made a mistake. And so it ended up not being the result that she thought that she was going to get. And then with Joseph, it wasn't necessarily a mistake he made. It was something his brothers did to him that happened to him. And again, it was a bad thing, and things clearly did not end up, I believe, the way that Joseph thought his life was going to go. But a point that I want to make that kind of comes out in both of these stories is that even though one story there was a specific person made mistakes and the other one the person didn't, but things happened to them, both stories, bad things happen, but God uses both of these situations, or something good comes from both of these situations. I'm not going to say God specifically invented the chocolate chip cookie, but it's an analogy. So with the cookie, even though the lady made a mistake, she still ended up making something good. And then with Joseph's story, something bad happened, but God was able to use that to then save people. And so I don't think God didn't specifically necessarily say, oh, Joseph is going to have to go into slavery, but this bad thing that happened, he turned it into good. And I want to point out that God can use bad things that happen just in general for good things, but he can also use mistakes that we make, and he can take the situation and somehow, even though there will be pain, something bad, necessarily, he can make something good come out of it. And so God has the power to do both, and I think this is especially important to remember now when there's so many crazy things happening around us with, like, there's bad things with COVID and then just so many bad things that stem off of that, and then there's like fires and just so many bad things. It's hard to remember sometimes that God can use all those things and he can somehow work it out for good. And there's a verse I'm going to read that a lot of you, some of you probably already have it memorized, and I'm sure most of you have heard it before. Romans 8:28, where it says, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. Now I want to bring out one more story, and this one I actually am going to read it because it's not terribly long, but it's found in 2 Kings chapter 5 verses 1 to 19. This story is not quite as well known as Joseph, so I am going to go ahead and read it. It says, Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but a leper. And the Syrians had gone out on raids, and had brought back captive a young girl from the land of Israel. She waited on Naaman's wife. Then she said to her mistress, If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy. And Naaman went in and told his master, saying, Thus and thus said the girl who is from the land of Israel. Then the king of Syria said, Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. Then he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which said, Now be advised, when this letter comes to you, that I have sent Naaman my servant to you, that you may heal him of his leprosy. And it happened when the king of Israel read the letter, that he tore his clothes and said, Am I God to kill and make alive, that this man sends a man to me to heal him of his leprosy? Therefore, please consider and see how he seeks a quarrel with me. So it was, when Elisha the man of God heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Why have you torn your clothes? Please let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. Then Naaman went with his horses and chariot, and he stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean. But Naaman became furious, and went away, and said, Indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me, and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the place, and heal the leprosy. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servants came near and spoke to him and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, Wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his aides, and came and stood before him, and he said, Indeed, now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Now, therefore, please take a gift from your servant. But he said, "As the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will receive nothing." And he urged him to take it, but he refused. So Naaman said, "Then if not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth, for your servant will no longer offer either burnt offerings or sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. Yet in this thing may the Lord pardon your servant, when my master goes into the temple of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow down in the temple of Rimmon. When I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord please pardon your servant in this thing." Then he said to him, "Go in peace." So he departed from him a short distance. So this story, I want to also point out, in this story specifically, the little maid is what we typically call her, the one who was taken away from her land and given to this captain that wasn't her family. And she had to live in this foreign land away from her family and everything. It seems like another drastic change in life that I'm sure she did not expect at all. And that could have been very hard. And still, God used this situation for something good to come out of it. Because salvation, there was this family that she was serving, ended up coming to know the one true God and decided, we're not going to be bowing down to idols anymore because of the witness that this girl has had. Even though all these bad things happened to her, because of those bad things, God used her and placed her in a situation where something good could come out of it. And we don't know, unlike in the story of Joseph, we know Joseph saw his family again. There was a happy ending in the end, and he took care of his family and all this. We don't know that this girl ever got to see her family again. We don't know that she got that happy ending where she got to go home. We assume that because of the witness that she had and just the family she was with and their change of beliefs, that she was probably well taken care of and had a good relationship with them. But that's honestly just speculation. We don't know if she ever got to the place where she got to go home and see her land again and had that happy ending. So I want to say that God doesn't, it's not necessarily that we always end up getting to see the happy ending on the other side. Sometimes it's really hard to look for how God is going to use a certain situation for good when you're in it, of course, but sometimes even to the end, like you still in the end don't get the answers that we sometimes on this earth don't get the answers that we want. Like, why did this happen? Why? I don't see anything, good. Like, I'm still here. I'm still not with my family. I'm still going through this, and I don't know why. But through all of these things, God is going to be with us through it, just as he was with Lil Maid and was able to use her. So there's a couple verses that I want to read. So through the good and the bad, Ecclesiastes 7:14 says, "In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider, surely God has appointed the one as well as the other, so that man can find out nothing that will come after him." And then it's very easy sometimes when this is happening to feel as if God is only watching us through the good times. And then when things start to go wrong, it seems like he's looked to some other person and is blessing them, and he doesn't have the capability to bless both of you at once. And go as this other person is going through some other situation. But that is definitely not true, especially like looking through COVID. Some people seem to be going through this fine, and then some people are actually benefiting from it, while other people are having like the end of the world, financially and all kinds of other issues, losing loved ones. And so it can be hard to see, thinking that's fair, but God does see all that happens. And in Proverbs 15:3 it says, "The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good." And there's this quote that I read by Al Fox, and it talks about, it says, "Hard times will consistently be there, but so will Christ." And then someday we will find out why things happen the way that they did when we get to heaven, even though we may not get that answer while we're down here of how God used that situation for good. We may not see the other people that are affected that come to Christ because of a situation that we're going through, or how maybe something worse didn't happen because this other bad thing happened. But some things, it says in Ephesians 5:13, "But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light, for whatever makes manifest is light." And so through all of this, let's just try to remember that the ultimate goal is heaven, and that we have this hope of heaven that we can strive to look towards, even as all of these bad things are happening. And let us seek to use every situation to further represent Christ so that we can bring light through the pain that sin brings. Just like Little Maid did, even though she was, I'm sure, having pain, like being away from home, she still was able to bring that light of God and the hope that she had and share it with other people, and then more people came to God because of it. And Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." And I know it's hard to really grasp and think about, but all this pain, it can't compare to the reward that will come at the end. Of a lot of these, of the reward at the end, just having more people being in heaven that maybe wouldn't have been there otherwise. And oftentimes when we go through hard times, it's when we feel closest to God because we don't have anything else to be able to turn to. So remember through the hard times that even like broken pieces of colored paper, become confetti. So there can come good from even hard and difficult situations, and that build character. But I guess I'll go ahead and have a prayer. And so bow your heads. Our Father in heaven, thank you for this, once again, this day that you've given us. Thank you for allowing us all to be able to have the technology to share so that we can kind of still have chapel together even though we're not. I ask that you would please bless the food that we are going to be eating here soon. And I want to thank you for providing it because there's so many people in the world that don't have enough to eat. And thank you that you have promised you'll always be with us and you see everything that goes on in our lives, both good and bad, and that someday in heaven at least we'll know why things happened the way that they did, and help us always to try and keep sight of you and to try to make a conscious effort to look for the good things that come from even harmful situations. And we always have blessings and things to be thankful for, and help us just to trust in you always and be with us through everything that we are going through in the hard times. And in Jesus' name, amen.
All right, you all are dismissed. So.